Hello Rivals fans, and welcome back to the Rivals Report, the show that gets you up to speed on Rivals esports news in a nice, bite-sized package. My name is Diatonic, and this is the Rivals Report number 7 for the week of July 14th, 2025. INGAGE's Grassroots weekly series rounded out its first cycle of play this past Friday, as 3 weeks of Swiss action culminated in a final double elimination bracket. A nearly $300 prize pool was on the line this week, with the top half of the field starting in the upper bracket of the tournament and the bottom half starting in the lower bracket. 8 teams entered the fray, with only 2 taking home a piece of the prize. I was back in the booth once again, this time joined by both the legendary Spartan Tano and Keg as well. If you've been following this series, then it should come as no surprise that Dawncore were the favorites to win this tournament. The team recently came off a fairly successful run in the second season of the Marvel Rivals Championship, and they were hungry for a win. While the rest of the pack trailed behind them a bit, there was especially some competition in the middle, with both militia squads Decoys and Eclipse competing for position, and Orion Wanderers keeping themselves in the mix as well. In the upper bracket finals, Dawncore and Orion Wanderers did battle, with Orion surprisingly coming out swinging on Hell's Heaven for map number 1. This may have been the closest to a map loss Dawncore had been throughout all of the MRGR, but they managed to emerge victorious after a highly contested round of domination. They'd also pick up a win on Yggdrasil Path and punch their ticket to Grand Finals, securing a money spot for themselves and sending Orion Wanderers packing to the lower bracket. Down there, Orion would face off against the Decoys in the lower bracket finals, who'd been on a tear through the lower bracket. They hadn't lost a map yet on the day and hoped to keep it that way. But this was Orion's opportunity to show how much they'd grown over these past 4 weeks of competition, and show off they did. They not only broke the Decoys' undefeated streak they racked up that day, but they won the match 2-0, and were granted a fated rematch once again with Dawncore in the Grand Finals. But it would be an uphill battle for Orion, as Dawncore received a 1-map advantage for completing their upper bracket run undefeated. This series was a best of 5, but this advantage meant that Dawncore only needed to win 2 maps instead of 3 to close out the set. And against arguably the toughest team in all of the MRGR, it was a tall order for any team to rise to. And on top of that, playing an extra set in the lower bracket meant that they had to be getting tired by this point. But all that spelled potential success for Dawncore, as they reaped the fruits of their labor for their dominance thus far. It was a clinical map number 1 for them as these 2 teams returned to Hell's Heaven for another bout, with Dawncore completely flipping the script on Orion. It wasn't as though Orion was completely devoid of signs of life, but Dawncore just had so much momentum at this point, it's very likely that any Rivals team would have found them to be a fair challenge. Spider Island served as the stage for match point, with Dawncore just a single win away from completing a 4-week undefeated streak without dropping a single map. Sopatic whipped out the Black Widow on this map, and while Orion would put up a fight near the end, they were absolutely hamstrung by level, experiencing some unfortunate connection issues right from the start of their defensive run. Orion were ultimately unable to secure a checkpoint, and that would cement Dawncore as the untouchable champions of this first phase of the MRGR. Between this and a respectable finish in the MRC, it's very likely that we'll be seeing Dawncore on the Ignite stage in no time, showing that events like this are truly the proving grounds for future top-tier challengers. And if you and your squad think you have what it takes, don't miss INGAGE's next major event, the Chronovium Cup 2, this coming Saturday and Sunday. Registration is open now, and on the line there are a prize pool of at least $300 and 12,000 units courtesy of the Marvel Rivals Sparks program. The first Chronovium Cup was host to EMEA heavy hitters like Berber Patapim and Zero Tenacity, so who knows what teams will come out of the woodwork for this one. Links are in the description. Well, a huge breakthrough emerged for the budding college Rivals scene last week, as the Collegiate Rivals Series has officially announced their upcoming fall and spring seasons. The Collegiate Rivals Series is one of the newest to arrive on the scene. They're entirely student-run, and they have aspirations to build themselves into the premier destination for Collegiate Rivals esports. I spoke with the league's executive director, Aspect, to get some more insight into the league and to preview what the future of Collegiate Rivals looks like. Though their first full year of competition doesn't kick off until the fall, they've been hard at work putting on their Summer Showdown 2025 event, a primer to help get the ball rolling on their competition and to help teams prep for the upcoming fall season. 10 universities are currently participating in that event, from Florida International University to Clemson, San Francisco State, and beyond. But the real meat of the competition comes with the kickoff of the fall 2025 season. Teams will participate in 8 weeks of Swiss play on Saturdays, and then the top half of the competing teams will qualify for a 2-week double elimination playoff bracket. On the line that season is a solid $2,500 paid out to the top 6 teams, making this one of the largest community tournament pools we've seen in Rivals thus far. Registration for that opens up on July 26th, just as the Summer Showdown draws to a close, and Swiss action starts on October 4th. The spring split also works just the same, with Swiss play starting up on January 31st, just after the turn of the new year. Teams will have a whole new opportunity to play for a new prize pool, and that will draw the competition year to a close. Well, not quite. While the fall and spring splits are somewhat separate, the Rivals Collegiate League is utilizing a championship point system to wrap up their competitive season. Throughout both splits, teams will be fighting for these championship points, which will carry over from the fall season into the spring. At the end of the spring split, championship points will be tabulated, and the 8 teams with the most points throughout the year will be invited to compete in the Grand Championship in mid-April. And that Grand Championship is slated to be a LAN event, making this the first Collegiate Rivals LAN tournament in history, and potentially one of the first few Rivals LAN events ever. But there's more than just the tournament structure, generous prize pools, and possibilities of LAN that set the Collegiate Rivals series apart from other community events. The series uses its own homegrown solution for event hosting, stat tracking, and match management. Where many tournaments are leveraging pre-existing services like StartGG for their events, the Collegiate Rivals series have tailored their very own web app and website for their own purposes. And speaking of websites, the Collegiate Series website is your one-stop shop for all info related to the series, including current and past season standings, news, rules, and more. You can check all that out and register for the fall season yourself over at collegiatemarvelrivals.com. As always, the link is down in the description. We'll continue to follow the Collegiate Series as it progresses, bringing you updates on all the big matches, dramatic showdowns, and everything you need to know about the college Rivals scene. For all that info and so much more, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Well, if you're one of the many players looking for a team or an org during this break between Ignite events, OG Esports may have an opportunity for you. OG, a Stage 1 Ignite competitor, recently revealed that they'll be organizing what they're calling a Marvel Rivals Combine. They're promising opportunities for pro players to showcase their talents in a curated environment, and even have an opportunity to join OG as a Rivals player. Applications did close last Friday, but they touted an open door policy for applications, meaning you're welcome to join whether you're already a grizzled vet of the Rivals esports scene, or if you're a rising star looking for your first shot. As the competition field continues to widen at the top level of Rivals, it only makes sense to offer ways for players to show their stuff, and for teams to get an opportunity to see what's out there. The Combine is set to be held in a couple of different phases. The first phase will welcome selected applicants to participate in what OG calls a multi-stage assessment. Players will compete in a handful of in-house scrims to determine each player's ability level, and all participants will be offered feedback to some degree regardless of the outcomes. So even if you don't manage to win a single game, you'll get some kind of guidance on how you're doing and how to improve. The other phase of the Combine is a bit more selective, narrowing the field down to the most exceptional candidates from the first phase. Those selected will get more in-depth access to coaching and feedback from OG's performance managers. And of course, at the end of it all, some candidates will be extended opportunities to join OG Seed, the org's Rivals roster, and be flown to Portugal for a Marvel Rivals bootcamp. It's a very ambitious project to be sure, but one that I feel can be a game changer for a lot of the players that are looking for their next or very first opportunity in Rivals esports. I've said it before, but I appreciate that Rivals has a clear path to esports competition baked into the game, with events like the MRC being open to anyone that's part of an in-game faction. But it can be tricky for a new player to find a home once they've reached that level, and it seems that OG are looking to alleviate some of the difficulties of that process. Best of luck to all players during selection, and to those that are chosen. And finally this week, the Rivals MENA Cup reached its conclusion last week, having started back on July 3rd and featuring several teams from the Middle East, North Africa, and the wider EMEA region. Several Ignite competitors entered, including Rad Esports, Zero Tenacity, Insomnia, LowNine, Schmungus, All Business, Alcancia, and EMEA MRC Season 2 champs Ex Oblivion. There were some other interesting combatants in the mix, including Saudi Arabian squads Dracarys and Think Twice. Grand Finals came down to 2 Ignite competitors squaring off, LowNine versus Rad Esports. Rad hardly needs an introduction at this point, being the team that sent Virtus Pro down to the lower bracket in the first week of Ignite group play. LowNine well surpassed many fans' expectations of them in Ignite, making it all the way to the lower bracket quarterfinals of playoffs. Their Ignite run ended after falling to Virtus Pro 2-0 in round 1, then Zero Tenacity in a 1-3 war in round 3. Interestingly, in their lower bracket run, LowNine managed to get revenge on Zero Tenacity, eliminating him from the tournament with a familiar 3-1 win. Burnin' T'Challa was the venue for map number 1, with Rad taking a dominant position from the pick and ban phase with their anti-strategist draft strat. They had access to basically all their best heroes, while LowNine went for a res comp with Adam Warlock and Mantis. The first point would belong to Rad, and LowNine were quick to stay versatile and swap away after the res comp didn't work out for them. But that just wouldn't be enough, and Rad were off to an early lead, taking the first map for themselves. LowNine's Line Pro was freed from the anti-strategist prison as we moved to Midtown for map number 2. But it would be Melio's Wolverine that terrorized LowNine on this map, making what would usually be the mean streets of New York a lovely little stroll as they cleared the map in overtime on their offensive run. Switching sides, Rad opted for the triple Vanguard, triple strategist comp for a big lockdown. L9 went for picks like Moon Knight and Squirrel Girl to try and counter it, but even that wasn't enough to stop Rad's Sloppenheimer comp, and they went up 2-0. And that brought Rad to match point, with Central Park serving as the stage for map number 3. The momentum was all in Rad's favor as they unlocked the payload in the blink of an eye and went on to bring Ratatoskr all the way to Dracula's castle in the end. Try as they might, but the tsunami that was Rad Esports washed over LowNine in the end, and Rad emerged the victors in a big 3-0 sweep. But there was absolutely nothing for LowNine to be ashamed of here, as they picked up some big wins against teams like Ex Oblivion and even the revenge win over Zero Tenacity. But it would be Rad as champions of this tournament as well, as they went completely undefeated throughout the entire bracket. And not only undefeated, but they completed the bracket without dropping a single map, positioning them as potentially one of the deadliest teams heading into Ignite mid-season finals in just a few weeks. Only time will tell, but I imagine that LowNine will be looking for some revenge against Rad when Ignite Stage 2 rolls around as well. Well, that's all for this week's Rivals Report. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest in Marvel Rivals Esports. And be sure to follow me on other platforms including Twitch, X, and TikTok. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in game.